Hello and welcome to another Stay Juicy podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ariana. I'm just finishing up the conference here in, where are we? Atlanta. I'm traveling so much in the next couple of weeks. I didn't even get a chance to go out and see the sights and eat some good food, but it's all good. I learned a lot at this conference. And so I am here with Miss Tiffany. She is the CEO and founder of Entice Me. And Entice Me is basically a full service sexual pleasure company, as she would call it, a one-stop shop where she features body safe, non-toxic sexual wellness, toys, products, courses, coaching, and programs even for cancer survivors. So welcome, Ms. Tiffany, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah. So we're here at ISSWSH, which is the International Society for the Study of Women's Health. Say that 5 times. And we met actually ISSWSH last year in Long Beach. And that was actually my first conference. And I think I even made some posts around ISSWSH because this was a very eye-opening conference for me. It's a very sex positive, very kind of honestly, just kind of in your face conference about reality around our sex lives. And last year was actually even more interesting to me in a way, just because they delved into some really interesting areas. This year it was a little more, it was very clinical, obviously, as it usually is. What did you think?
I felt like this year was really focused on hormones and menopause.
Yeah.
Instead of maybe pleasure. Last year, there was a lot more pleasure conversation. There was kink presentations and product presentations. And this year, and maybe it's because we were with the International Society of Sexual Medicine as well.
No. I'm saying that they need to tone it down a little bit or maybe. I don't know.
It was just different.
Yeah, it was different. But it was good. It was always good. It's always good to see people. But we connected last year and we found out we had some other things in common. We both did the Goldman Sachs 10K SB program at the same time. Actually, we were doing it. Didn't even realize that. But I instantly connected with Tiffany because she is what I would call a woman on the glow. And as you all know, women on the glow really true to the mission of this podcast, which is to talk about juicy lives, juicy experiences, and even juicy vaginas. So I would say initially with this podcast, for sure, I've definitely focused a lot on education. I brought some science, but in my heart of hearts, I really wanted to get to some juicy conversations. And so this is why when I was talking to you last night and we started talking because we were having some very juicy conversations and I was like, oh my God, you got to be on it. We're doing this tomorrow. So I know they thought I was having a seizure last night, but I was so excited because I was like, yes, to find a woman who actually is so transparent and brave and open about her sexuality and her experience, and one who is actually helping other women find their pleasure. We are in for a treat today. So welcome again. It is great to have you. And tell me just a little bit more about how you got to this space and to do what you do.
So I've always been very fascinated with sex and sexuality. And growing up, it was the dirty mind girl. But it's about who we are. Sex makes everything in the world go round. And we don't learn about pleasure as women. We learn about the consequences that come with sex. And so after being in a narcissistic relationship in my mid-20s and thinking that something was wrong with me, that I was the only woman not having orgasms and that I just wanted more sex and more sex, but it was really that I wanted better sex. And so I needed to find out what that was. And I realized I didn't know. And I didn't even know that I hadn't had an orgasm. And I find that with a lot of women that they don't even know if they have or haven't. And so I always say, if you are questioning it, you have not.
Girl, yes.
And so I've always, since I had that first orgasm in my mid-20s, wanted to change the conversations around pleasure and around sex, and that it shouldn't be stigmatized. It shouldn't be taboo. It should be glorious. And I think that when we close the way that we think about sex as women and think about self-pleasure, then we'll restore the power balance to the world.
Yeah, so that's actually that was the statement you made last night. And I was like, oh my God, she's on to something. So tell me, I know I understand what the pleasure gap is, but tell our audience who's listening, like explain the pleasure gap and kind of what your theory is around sexual pleasure in that
So the pleasure gap or the orgasm gap is the amount that women orgasm during intercourse versus men. And it can be as much as for first time encounters, women typically orgasm 7 to 11% of the time, and men orgasm like 95% of the time.
area.
And
For first time
for,
encounters,
for first time encounters,
like period or with that person.
with that person. So, like,
Okay,
and
okay.
hookup culture is very prevalent. So that's a lot of unsatisfactory sex.
Hell yeah.
And I think the stat is 50% of women that have been married over 20 years could go without ever having sex again. And that makes me really sad
Yeah.
because sex is our power.
Yeah. And what do you mean by that?
So
Elaborate.
well, all life force energy, all life comes from sex. We literally birth life. But I believe that when you shut yourself down sexually, you're shutting yourself down creatively, emotionally, and with your power to do more. And so when you look at studies in gender wage gap and the amount that women ask for raises or promotions, it really correlates directly to the amount that we self pleasure as women compared to men.
So explain.
So men in studies, whether it's accurate or not, men tend to, it's reported that they masturbate 23% more than women. And if you look at the gender pay gap, that's 21%.
Okay, that's some different kind of math.
That's a pretty good correlation. And, I think as women, we're stigmatized about self pleasure growing up and in cultures and religions. And then men are not, they're celebrated for it. And when you self pleasure, instead of the oxytocin creating, which is the cuddle chemical, it's that binding yumminess that you get with an orgasm, instead of it binding you to a partner in partnered sex, it creates self-love in you, and it's proven that it helps to create confidence. Also, when you orgasm, testosterone blocks pain receptors in your brain, so you can push past and do things that you might not normally feel comfortable doing. So men will tell you that they self-pleasure before they do everything, but that allows them to do
what you would
things.
call the power.
The power.
Yeah. So we don't have to debate the pleasure gap or the coincidence of the percentage, but it is a very interesting fact. But I think what is undebatable is the fact that women really are missing out on pleasure. And I think I am going to be 59 this month, and I am of a certain generation where to be bold and to know what you want and to understand, self pleasure. It just wasn't. It just definitely wasn't anything talked about. We didn't have social media, and obviously I'm one of the many women that I've heard say, my mom just came, gave me a book, and literally put it on my desk about sex, and that was it. Like there was nothing that inspired us or otherwise gave us permission to explore ourselves and to seek that pleasure. True story. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I've worked with a nurse practitioner who, when we first started working together, she's very sex positive, very much in this area, in this realm. And when we first started working together, she told me that she had given her 15-year-old daughter a vibrator. And when she first told me, this was years ago, I was just like, really? What? You gave her a vibrator? And then I thought about it and I was like, oh my God. Like it was like a light bulb came on. And I was like, why don't we do this for girls? Like men easily have a way to self pleasure. Like it's just much more functional for them, right? They don't need necessarily, and not that we need these things, but they're very helpful to help you understand where your buttons are, right? So why not? So I know my daughter will kill me, but I give my daughter one, I think it was her 15th birthday, and she gave it right back to me. But I'm happy to report that that was not the end of the story, and she just needed to be empowered to do her own thing. So let's just say I did plant a seed, and I think as mothers, we can't even empower our daughters because we're still stuck kind of in this matrix that we are not invited to the pleasure party.
I agree with providing the pleasure for young women, because men, like you said, are able to do it and they just do it. It's there right in front of them. But when you look at young ladies who, my personal experience, I grew up in Idaho and we were a very liberal family, but a lot of my friends and classmates were not. And we had the highest teenage pregnancy rate per capita in the nation. My junior year in high school, I knew 22 girls in a town of 9,700 people that were pregnant or had babies. And they all would say, I would hear this repeatedly, oh, I just wanted someone to love me. And I think we have to love ourselves first. Self pleasure teaches us to love ourselves. If nothing else, it's just taking time for you and you're not connected to anyone else.
Yeah. So just kind of, I'm circling back to the fact that we're at the ISSWSH conference and it's all about sex. Like this conference is all about sex, but it's sex in and through a clinical medical lens, like not sex like, what we would see in normal, whatever, media, pornography, anything like that. It's like it's really explaining human sexuality, how it shows up, how it's impacted by disease states, aging. And really, I love this conference in part because just of the inclusivity that it provides for anyone in this field, because sex is available to everybody. Like there's no real debate about that. Like we all are, like we may all have different skin colors. We might worship different people, gods, what do different things, eat different foods, but lots of people are having sex. Let's just put it that way. And so I'm sure everybody's not having sex. But this is where you come in to help women. I want you to explain exactly, what is a sex coach? Exactly. What does that mean? And how do you help women find this pleasure? Elaborate.
I teach women how to fall in love with themselves, and that is by stripping everything away that they do in their lives and focusing on who they are as a woman to begin with, and learning how to not just touch themselves, but feel themselves, because we touch ourselves all day long, but we forget to feel. And so I teach them to get back connected to their bodies and how to find out what their needs, wants, and desires are, and then how to communicate them to a partner if that's what they want.
So give me an example of what that looks like.
So we do, if you can just, here's an exercise you can just do, just close your eyes and put your hands on your face and just focus on where your fingers are coming in contact with your skin. And then what do you feel? Do you feel the temperature, the texture? Are there little hairs? Is it chilly? All those things. But just do that. And it's called sensate touch or sensate focus. And it's from Masters and Johnson back in the 60s, but it just really helps you to focus on the moment. Mm-hmm. And I call it the body, mind, vulva connection of we need all three of those. It's not one or the other. To have pleasure, you have to have arousal in your brain. You have to know how your body works. You have to be comfortable with that as well.
What is the most common thing you would say that you encounter when women are coming to you to explore themselves or love themselves or just understand their bodies better?
Sexual pain is a big one because I work with menopausal women and cancer survivors, and learning that sex doesn't have to be penetrative sex, that it can be such a wider scope of what our definition of sex is, but also, finding tools and resources so that it is not painful any longer.
And speaking of what sex is, how would you describe sex?
And this has changed because I used to think sex is straightly penetrative sex.
Yeah.
And so any genital contact pretty much is sex, because if you look at same sex partners, their definition, there's not always penetrative sex. And so what are you saying, that they're not having sex if they're not having penetration? So genital contact.
And how would you describe the difference between sex and intimacy?
It goes hand in hand. And because of all of the regulations and algorithms and everything, a lot of times I'll have to use the word intimacy instead of sex to skirt around different things or to make people feel more comfortable, because intimacy coach sounds a little sexier than sex coach in the eyes of the world. But intimacy is that bond that you have with someone, that connection, I think. Of course, sex is intimate because you are being close to someone else.
So would you say if you are having sex with someone, then you are by definition intimate with that person? Or is it possible just to have sex and it be just a completely, almost visceral body experience?
It can be both, I think. You're definitely being intimate in the touching and the contact, but you may not have that
The bond, yeah.
and that's not necessary for great sex either.
Well, yeah, and I'm reading this because this idea, and I think it is true for a lot of women, is that yes, we want good sex, but we want, at the end of the day, we want intimacy. We want that closeness. We want to feel that. And so, I see this in patients where, we're coming in and we're talking about decreased libido, decrease, just desire in general. Like there's some women it's like, I could take it or leave it. I don't really care. And I'm probing to find out first and foremost, what is that relationship like? Because the relationship really does change so much of how we're going to look into sex and intimacy. And so you might want to have sex because you just kind of want to have sex, but as women, we tend to want more intimacy. And I feel like that drives us oftentimes away from sex, right? Because feels like it just gets a lot more blurry for women than for men. Like men, it's like it seems like, and I'm completely like generalizing here, right? But I'm saying that on average, a man can go and have sex and not feel that intimacy, that bond, that whatever. Whereas, I can't, a man could probably come to a conference like this, see a woman, do some banging and then go home and feel perfectly fine. Like I couldn't, yeah.
So part of that is the biological part is that oxytocin, that bonding chemical, stays in men's system about 20 minutes. And in women's systems, it stays for 3 to 7 days.
Get out of here.
So that creates that need and that connection. And it's anthropological of, men needed to be able to spread their seed and create humanity, and women needed to be chaste and be satisfied for several days until their man comes back from hunting and gathering. Sex at Dawn is a great book if you've not read that.
Oh my God, you just hit me with it. Okay, that's crazy.
And so it's that, they don't really have a choice. That's why they have sex and they masturbate 2 or 3 times a day, because they're getting that hit every time. We're like, we're satiated.
Oh, we're good. Wow. Well, this is how we started talking last night because there was a student, she studies sexual anthropology, which I was just like, this whole field of study is so fascinating to me. And I don't know why, because I'm, even though I say all these things and stay juicy, I'm pretty vanilla, I would say, overall. But it fascinates me. It's interesting to me. And I'm just so curious because I feel like so many of us have just been sheltered from this world of sexuality. And so many of us have not had the freedom to really have real conversations with other women and really tap into that power, right? We just don't get it. That's what we talked about last time. It's like, where do we have these conversations where we can empower women to really understand the power of, I'm just going to say it, the power of the pussy? It's real. It's so real. And I feel like I've personally been more of a late bloomer, although in retrospect, I was probably, I would say hypersexual, but I didn't even realize I was doing anything. I would just have it work. I just knew if I moved my body a certain way as a kid, like that just felt good. I was so ignorant to it that I think one time I remember I was just doing it on the floor in front of the babysitter. And it didn't even occur to me that it was a bad thing. I was just like, I know how to make this happen. And I don't know what it is, but goddamn, it feels really good.
It's really good
doing it. So I've just never, that's never been elusive to me. But when I see a woman that has not had an orgasm, I just literally lose my shit. And this podcast, I'm just going to say, I'm going to be very real because I'm talking to my very real friend here. And I feel like I can be free to express myself exactly how I feel like today. But I feel very passionate about this idea around empowering women access that pleasure for themselves. And I don't know what had to shift for me to feel so okay and free and explore that. But this is why after I got that enjoy, and I think that tool that I always talk to you guys about, it's like once you figure certain things out, you're like, oh my God, like this is a huge secret. So I'm just here to tell you, like, there are things there in that pelvis that if you only knew. So tell us about it, because I know you can say it so much better here.
I think one of the top things that's typed into Google is, how do I have a penetrative orgasm?
Mm-hmm.
And
now let's just be clear. So we're talking penetrative orgasm, meaning that you have to have something in your vagina that's doing something to cause that orgasm, as opposed to a clitoral orgasm, where most women, and we know that most women, at least 80%, are not going to achieve vaginal orgasm, and 20%, which I think is a generous number. I don't think 20% of women are having internal. I just don't. Not based on the women I see, because I asked them.
Well, we were in a session yesterday with Dr. Lori Mintz, who wrote Becoming Clitorate. We took she had us do online in the moment. 2% of women in the room had
that part. That's very much
penetrative orgasms without any clitoral stimulation.
Well, what about with clitoral stimulation?
Then it went up to, I think, like 60%. No, wait, no, 38%. And then most women have it with clitoral stimulation and only.
Got it.
I can't, don't have my notes in front of me, but
yeah,
it was, they say 79% or 80% of women need clitoral stimulation to have an orgasm. But that leaves 11%, I think, is the stat that don't have orgasms at all. In our room yesterday, of a couple hundred people, it was 2% also never have orgasms. And then, the most was clitoral stimulation. What was really interesting of what she was saying also is that, and she's got amazing stats, like great stats. She's a researcher and professor and psychologist or therapist, and that 99% of women masturbate or self pleasure only externally, and 1% then with penetration. So I think that you need to masturbate the same way that you want to have an orgasm.
Exactly.
And so if you aren't self-pleasuring with penetration, how do you ever going to find the spots that hit inside? And I do have a whole course on teaching women to have vaginal orgasms, because there are areas in the vagina that are very pleasurable, that you can have spontaneous orgasms without clitoral stimulation on the external side. I do. I'm one of those 2%. I actually need penetration to have an orgasm, because that's how I trained my body.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you were a late bloomer in that sense.
Yes.
And so you almost trained yourself to, I won't say get it right, because there is no right.
There is no right or wrong.
Yeah. And I have patients that come in and they're just like, I want to have a vaginal orgasm. And that is perfectly fine. Like, I'm not saying that is not something worth achieving, because I think you should have all of the different ones that you can get, like explore, understand. But it doesn't, some women actually feel like they're somehow less than, because that's not something that they've either achieved. And I think that the media does such a disservice to us, because it's like, there's no way that a woman is going to just see some man and go in some bathroom and be sitting on a sink and just a couple times and have it, or like, it just,
and there's
doesn't work. It's just
right,
like it work. It doesn't. Tell me that I'm not.
No, I call it the myth of the Hollywood orgasm, because it does not happen. Zero foreplay, penetrative sex alone. Just met the person and 2 seconds and
yeah. I mean, I know we did some editing, but I'm like, there's just no way here. That's not how it happens. But not even in the bed. Like, it's just.
Well, in Bridgerton, like they all.
But it's good to watch, though.
It is good to watch. It's great erotica, but it's a disservice to women to think that that's going to happen.
Right. And so we're just trapped here because we don't know our bodies. We're looking at something on a screen that's like completely just abstract from reality. It's not real. And we don't even know what we don't know. Like, help us out here.
Well, it starts with anatomy, teaching, like in sex ed classes around America, when you can't say the word clitoris or pleasure in so many curriculums, how are we supposed to learn?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I started my business, is because I wanted to create these groups and community of where women could come together and have these conversations so we don't feel alone, we don't feel broken. And that's what I found, that when we start asking these questions, how do you self pleasure? Do you self pleasure? Do you orgasm when you have intercourse? These questions, and people then go, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Oh, that person, oh, my friend doesn't. Oh, well, I can say that I don't either.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
And there's no shame. It's like we're here for you. As my motto is, I'm saving the world one vagina at a time. And maybe I'm on this bandwagon because, I mean, I'm 59. I would say in my 50s is when I really was like, okay, there's some stuff going on here. And true story with that, enjoy. When the woman first brought it in to my office, probably almost 10, 12 years ago, I was like, what the hell is that thing? She's like, well, this is a bestseller. And I was like, it can't be. Like, it's not possible. I don't know what you're talking about, lady. And I literally kind of, I played with it for a minute and I was just like, first of all, it's heavy. It feels like a weapon. And I was just like, I had no understanding. And I'm a gynecologist, right? So I think this is what really just drives me, because I'm just like, I feel a certain kind of way that, that I never got any of this in my training, and I wasn't empowered enough. I wasn't informed. I didn't even know. But now that I get it, it's like almost this world that once you enter into it and once you realize, like, ooh, it is something around power. Like I think it's a certain confidence that comes with it, because you're just like, I have mastered my body so well and I understand it. And I mean, I love being intimate with my husband, but it's to the point where it's like, I can do this better than anybody else can. Like, I know my spot. Who the hell else is going to know your spots better than you?
Well, I think that's so important, because it's pleasure and it's power that don't rely on anyone else for. That it is like, I can do this. And when we learn about our bodies and we learn what makes it work and we learn how we can orgasm, then you're not going to settle for less in the bedroom. And when you were saying, women say, oh, I don't, we talked about women not ever caring if they have sex again. Well, then they haven't had great sex, because once you've had great sex, and I think that once sex, I also say, is with yourself or with someone else, that you're not going to sit there and go, oh, that was okay. Like, get to work. Here, I'm going to show you what to do, or I'm going to do it myself, because
that part.
But when you know yourself well enough, I think like my group of friends, they've all taken my courses and everything. And so they're like, oh, sex is always good. Well, sex is always good because we don't let it be bad.
We don't let it be bad. That part.
We know what to do. We know how to move our bodies. We know what it takes to warm ourselves up. We're not going to have penetration if we're not ready. And that's ability to set boundaries and to communicate our needs.
Yeah. And to just put yourself first in so many ways. And I think that's what's so liberating about, aging and losing what I call that estrogen veil, being the people pleaser and making sure that everyone else is okay. And we're talking even in the bedroom, like, no, I'm about to make sure I'm okay. And then we can deal with you. But let's be clear. Like, I mean, I don't say it like that because that's not sexy. But in my mind, I'm like, no. Like, I know now that it's like I have to orchestrate in a certain way my pleasure, because even after 25 years with my partner, there's still gaps. There's still things where I'm like, okay, you're still not quite getting this part, but that's okay because I'm going to help you here. But I think it can be intimidating for your partner. And it's really, I think it's an interesting thing to start to navigate, because it is, again, that power that you talk about. And once you understand it, it's like, no, we're not walking away here without the gold. And that's not to say that that's the goal, right? Doesn't have to be in any way, because there's some days I'm just like, I just don't feel like
some days our hormone levels, or what's going on in the world, what's around us, what's happening in the socks are over here and the laundry's over here. Sometimes it's just not going to happen. But I think sex educators too often say, oh, it's about the journey. No, I want a fucking orgasm. We would never tell men, oh, it's about the journey, have a good time.
Yeah.
And they don't get to ejaculate and have an orgasm.
That part. Okay.
Right? They would say they didn't have sex unless they had an orgasm. I would say most men would say that. Like, their definition of sex is having an orgasm.
Yeah.
And that's just a generalization, but we don't say that to men. Oh, just enjoy the journey. Hope
Right,
it was
right.
good.
Hope it was good for you.
I'll say on that train of thought, like when you don't ask for what you want in the bedroom, it's really hard to ask for that out in society, whether it's at a job or asking for a contract or money. And I think that it really correlates to that with women not feeling like they're good enough to ask for a raise. Or I pulled some stats that in salary negotiations, men will ask for a raise 4 times more than women. And when women do ask for a raise, or a promotion, they ask for 30% less dollar wise than men.
Wow. Yeah. And so, I mean, I know that that correlation of those numbers of 21% in the pay gap versus, this 23% of this differential of achieving orgasm. But the reality, though, is that there is that power that comes, and it's something that I feel that we need to have more conversations around, because I think as a woman, just, seeing one other woman that's empowered and really just feeling a certain kind of way about herself and her sexuality empowers you. Like, it gives you more confidence. You're like, okay, well, she's doing it and she's not crazy or whatever. But I tell people, as women, we drank all the Kool-Aid about all the things, right? We've drank the Kool-Aid about partnership, getting married, having kids, like having this particular way of life and settling for the things that just don't quite make the cut. And I think as we evolve and bloom into this second half, that we're like, but wait a minute, what about me? What about me? What about me? And you're saying, yeah, that all of that. Yeah. So I still want to know more about how do you help women on this journey? Like, I know you talked about women who have painful intercourse, but I'm talking about just, I want to say the average woman who is like, look, I'm not feeling satisfied in the bedroom. I'm not really sure how all these things work. The toys, it kind of intimidate me, or the tools. There's so many women that are not satisfied, and there's still a certain amount of shame around them pleasuring themselves. How do we break that stigma? What would you say to help a woman just give her permission to just dive in?
When I have them ask themselves if they would want less, if their partner wanted more pleasure, would that turn them off? Because women a lot of times won't ask for what they want because they think it's selfish or they don't feel worthy. And we have to realize that we are worthy of pleasure, but also our partners, if we are in a relationship, do want to please us most of the time, and that's that intimacy, and that it's okay to ask for what you want. Getting to that point, I do modalities like EFT, the tapping. I build scripts for my clients based on what their belief systems are, and unsatisfactory sex or boring sex is probably the number 2 thing that women come to me for.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's monotonous. It's, the same thing, same time. We do
Yeah.
this, we do this, and so
How do we break that monotony? Because I'm not going to lie, I do feel like there's some.
we all get in those
Yeah,
ruts.
it does feel, and then it's like, yeah.
So one of the things is that foreplay has to be foreplay. Men need 2 minutes. Part of what toys and tools can do is close that arousal gap, because women's arousal starts in the brain, men's starts with blood flow to the genitals. So what are you doing on a daily basis to eroticize your brain? I have all my clients listen to erotic novels on their phone.
Who's your favorite erotic person? Do you listen to them?
I do. I don't do it that much because I'm always
You're good.
turned on. Like I would be like,
I can do it right now.
like, don't give me more. Actually, do give me more. I'll take it. But I think for moms are the busiest people in the world, that you listen to erotica while you're getting ready for bed, while you're brushing your teeth, or you read some erotica together when you get into bed. Men, like take 2 minutes to get aroused, and women need about
time.
25 minutes, I think, is the
Hard.
average. And
Okay.
most of us get 3 minutes. Of course, we're not going to get ready for orgasm.
Okay.
Like, what does that look like? And Esther Perel says that, foreplay is ongoing and it's from one encounter to the next. And so keeping that eroticism alive in your life on a daily basis, flirt, text, sext each other, take a minute and put yourself first, and self-pleasure, because if your hormone levels are low, self-pleasuring is, you're more likely to bring yourself to an orgasm, and then you can naturally raise your hormones that way because of all the endorphins and everything that are released at orgasm. And so I really take my clients to get that into as much as possible routine of self-pleasuring. And then that people go, what's going on with you? You are glowing.
Right.
And, people are just drawn to you. And I think that's part of the paid thing too, because people are, I want what you've got.
Right. I want what she's having.
And then
I never thought about that.
People like, I don't think I'm ever the most attractive woman in the room, but I think people are always drawn to me. Like, what do you do?
What are you doing, girl? What did you have for breakfast this morning? I want what she's having.
Because when we have an orgasm, it's like Botox without the needles. Collagen is released into and stimulated in our system, and it's proven to smooth fine lines, wrinkles.
Get out of here. Stop it. Stop. I didn't know that.
Like all the health, we could have a whole show on just the health benefits of orgasm.
And we're going to do that. We're going to do that, actually, because you're going to be my orgasm girl. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. This is what I needed for this podcast, because I needed to find someone that we could have these conversations with and create a platform that, again, is still informative. There's still science, but the authenticity, like the realness of out here in these streets. What are we doing? Because we need to help these ladies. And I feel like just them hearing your story, what you do, the fact that there are other women that are struggling, the fact that this is even a thing that you deserve to have, the fact that, I think we are numb with, parenting, mothering, just working. We're doing all the things, and we are not just tapping into me, right? And, it's so funny that you say that about glowing, because and I don't know, this probably was a correlation with when I just kind of got there. It was even before I shaved my head, but I think all of this for me came to a head really a few years ago, probably in 2021. And, I shaved my head, and that's when it just went crazy. And once I let go of this idea that, I had to look a certain way or do a certain thing, or how important my hair really was to me, it really allowed me to dive into some other areas of exploration. But I get it all the time. Now, I'm thinking it's the Sculptra and all of the treatments that I do, which I do think, because I tell people I'm really 80 years old. But I think it's that. But I do feel like it's an energy that you have and that you can almost tap into differently. And you said it last night. You're like, I can tell who's having orgasm and who's not. How do you, I know it's like it's a gestalt, but tell me, how do you know?
Well, it's really those fine, like those minute things in the face. Like when someone's really upset or really uptight, we say, you need to get laid.
Right. Right.
Well, it's all that like tension held up in the body and like how they carry themselves. It's really, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. So when you look at me, do I look like I'm doing good?
Oh, yeah. How about me?
Yes, girl. We got that glow. We just saying.
And if I wanted to say too, that if self-pleasure is like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. You don't have to start there. It's a journey of that, of start with that facial touch. Start by when you take a shower, invoking all your senses. What does it smell like? Like, did you take time to smell your body wash and your I get those days where I'm like, did I rinse my conditioner out of my hair? Right. I just was in the shower for 10 minutes. Did I shaved one leg, but when we're mindful of that, of like, what does it smell like? What does the water feel like on my body?
Yeah.
And then when you put your lotion on, instead of, like I told you, I got ready in 5 minutes this morning for our meeting, but take that extra time and rub the lotion on your skin. And that starts to bring oxytocin into your system, is that touch. That's why we need hugs. That's why we need to feel ourselves. But like, what do your legs feel like? What does your body feel like? So it can start there. And then you'll notice a difference if you just start to invoke your senses into everything. And then you'll be like, oh, well, what's going around me? What's happening? And really be present in your life and in your day.
Yeah. I'm going to say that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not. We're conditioned that we put everyone else first in our lives. And that's one of the most important things, is that we take extra time for ourselves. And that's why I tell women in my courses, like, okay, it's going to be hard to set aside your time for yourself, but your partner's doing it. And why don't the kids are going to come in, lock the door. And if you have to do it in the shower, you do it in the shower. But that is time for you more than even the self pleasure and the orgasm. And it's like, I'm worth taking an hour out of my day for me, or 10 minutes, or start with 2 minutes.
It's a disease though, because I think we get caught in it and we don't even realize how caught we are in it until somebody points it out, like, well, when was the last time you did something? And we put ourselves at such a second thought. It's such a back burner, as though our rest, our pleasure, our loving ourselves is negotiable. It's not negotiable anymore. And I feel like if until you really start to tap into that real self-love, but I know that the mindfulness, and I think that even with self-pleasure, what I have found is that, I can't do that when I'm in my head, right? Like when you start thinking about this person, what they said, or, how is American Express deal tomorrow, and then the state of the world, and so I find myself sometimes like I can't even go there because it's just I'm too in my head. And I think that's where a lot of women also are not able to tap into that pleasure, because we're in our head for everything and we don't know how to get out of it.
And that's where, I mean, right now, I was talking to my girlfriends on our text chain, and like none of us were self pleasuring like we normally do because just we weren't feeling it with the state of the world. And when I came to this conference, I was speaking, doing a presentation. I was like, I have to get this done because I need it for my confidence.
Yeah.
And I noticed a shift. And then I was like, oh, why wasn't I doing this before?
And so like a massage, you're getting it and you're like, oh, this feels so
or
good.
working out, like all the things that we know we should do.
Yeah. But this is a different should though, because the reward is great. And it's not like working out, you get a reward, but it's a lot more mental, there's a lot more gymnastics mentally sometimes that have to go on there. But it's a different kind of gymnastics that allow you to get to be present with yourself and to really know that. Or like, I wish I knew what this formula was, because it was just really an evolution. And I would say, no matter how old you are, if I'm really real about this, I started doing vaginal rejuvenation and I was helping other women achieve their sexual health. And then I was like, what the hell are you doing for your sexual health? Like, you do this all day. You can talk to these women. You're showing them where your G spot is, but do you really know where you're you're not even really doing all these. And I was okay. I was like, I can have my clitoral orgasm. I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. But then I was like, I got curious because some people were like, oh, this is so much better and this and that. And I was like, wait a minute now. I can't be doing this for you. And I'm not getting some of that. I need to know what's going on here. So I was very intentional about it. But I also feel, and just full disclosure for me, I just feel like, and I love that they touched on this at the conference, having a little bit of cannabis for me, just to get out of my head, and a very, very low dose. Like, you can have a gummy, and I'm not prescribing cannabis for people. I'm just saying that there is data around especially low dose of a lot of different drugs technically. And this is not new, right? We learned that they were doing this in Mesopotamia. Cannabis before sex is a thing. This isn't just a thing that started out in the United States here in 25. This has gone back to like before Christ's time. So, I think this is why just understanding your history and learning the facts, because I didn't know this. Like, I felt a little, I would say, shame around it, but I was just like, wow, you got to really, but yeah, I do, because I am too much in my head. And if I don't get out, none of us are having fun, because I got to go somewhere. We got to go. And alcohol that just doesn't do it for me. Like, alcohol just makes me sleepy. It disrupts my sleep. So for me, getting back to that is that I think that's what really opened the world for me, because it allowed me to get out of my head a lot, but it also just the pleasure is everything is accentuated, right? And so with that, and now all of the creams and potions now with the CBD and the THC, my body has responded really well to that. And I just want to share that with everybody. Like, I know that's not for everyone, but if you are feeling like, how do I get to that place? Even if you take a 10 milligram gummy, you quarter that, you're getting 2.5 milligrams. That's a tiny amount, but it's just enough that it might soften you a little bit. What do you think? Do you ever talk to people about what they need to do to get there?
I talk to them about being in their body and doing that, but if there's a substance that helps you, then absolutely. I am allergic to that, to CBD, hemp, so I haven't tried THC, so I don't know for myself, but I know a lot of my clients do dose and do gummies and in their 70s, like I sell tools to women in their 70s, 80s, even 90s because they want pleasure in their lives and they deserve it.
Yeah,
And sometimes it takes to that age to do it,
yeah,
to say yes to yourself.
to say yes to yourself. Yeah. So it's not uncommon. Again, I'm not prescribing, alcohol or any kind of abuse, any drug, but I think that you should be aware that there is data that supports what is actually happening. And I knew it was happening for me, but I didn't know all the other facts around it. Like those are my idea, right? Like this has been around for a minute and we're just so uninformed about sex and the reality of this experience that we've been having since the beginning of time. And what do we have to do to shake things up again? But I feel like we're going to have some more conversations because there are just little rabbit holes that we didn't get to go down. But now I know who I'm going to call, and I'll be like, you'll be my official pleasure consultant here,
Okay.
hopefully. And yeah, we can really have some juicy conversations around pleasure and getting rid of the shame. I mean, we can get really explicit and really detailed into all the things, but it's really more so just about giving women permission to start that process, to put yourself first, to just tap into your pleasure. Just try it, just see what happens. And again, I've had so many patients that even if you tell them to take a mirror and look, they're like, ugh. And it's like, that is so sad. Like, what do you mean, ugh?
Well, and just not just down here taking a mirror, but even just looking in the mirror
Yeah.
at your face or naked. I do a naked mirror exercise with my clients as well, where you have to strip down and thank your body for what it
Actually
has for you. And I think our bodies tell the roadmap to our story of all the scars and everything, stretch marks, everything are like part of our journey and our lives. And it's a roadmap of what's happened to us and what we've been through and where we've been and where we are. But to get women to take their clothes off and look at themselves naked is really difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm dealing with cancer survivors or in menopause where you gain weight or any type postpartum. Anytime when your body has gone through a traumatic experience or you have in your life, it's difficult, but we have to love ourselves first.
We do. And I've heard that so often. And I kind of was like, oh, yeah, love yourself, love yourself. I never really listened, though. I never really stopped and being like, what exactly does that mean to love myself? And part of loving myself means being able to pleasure myself and being able to be like, there's more to me. Like there's other dimensions and there's other things, and it begins to open up other dimensions for you. I can't really explain it. It's a new journey for me as well. So I'm glad I have an expert on the journey, and we're gonna continue on this. But I think we've had a good time here.
And let us know which ones what rabbit holes you want us to go down.
Oh, well, the funny thing, last night we talked about some of your favorite toys. I will make a shameless plug and say that I've had this dream to have a website that has, some of the things that I've talked about here, but just a way that you can just access these toys. Because a lot of times we don't want to go into the store and, go into these shops. Even though I have these in my office, like everybody knows it's a very sex positive office. People see them there and they're like, she has toys. And it's literally like, what kind of place is this? And I'm like, it's a place where we're just keeping it real. Like, you need that toy, girl. So stop, go over there and look at the toy. Don't act like you don't need that toy. You want to go look at it, but they won't do it. And so just having the online presence is good. So you were telling me about your favorite toy though last night, and it was a Lilo product.
The Enigma is pretty amazing.
The Enigma, yeah.
So it has the suction and the internal that vibrates and hits your G spot, and it's like tear.
Yes, I know. That's what she did last night. You were like, I was like, that one. I want that toy. I want with the tears. So I think that's what we'll do. We're going to do a show on toys. and we're going to help women understand how these toys work. And we both actually have, tell me about where they can go to learn more about you and all the things.
EnticeMe.com is my website, and on social media, Entice Me Soirees, and Facebook, just my name, Tiffany.Yelverton. I do a lot of videos and things around products and how to incorporate them and just how they work in general on my YouTube and all those channels.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've done any, but if you scroll back, there's something.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so glad we connected.
I know. I'm so glad.
Yeah, as soon as we started talking last night, I was like, that's it right there. I just want a really real conversation. So thank you for gifting me with probably one of the realest conversations I've been able to have. And it's nice to have another person to have that with, because when I'm speaking by myself, sometimes it just feels a little weird to be like, girl, get your toy and, rant on too much about self-pleasure. But I got an expert here, so I don't have to be looking any kind of way. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And as usual, ladies, you're going to stay brilliant, stay beautiful, but most of all, stay juicy. I'm Dr. Ariana, and I will see you